Commission meeting, and I will be starting the meeting because President Bernardo is held up in traffic. So the first item, or we have roll call, please.
I think he must.
Still roll call.
I didn't see this.
Commissioner Brennan? Commissioner Holsinger?
Here.
Commissioner Carabano?
Here.
Commissioner Tucker?
Here.
President Bernardo?
Okay, thank you.
Then identify a real property
Okay,
negotiator.
the first item in open session is identification of district real property negotiator. I designate General Manager Peter Grinnell as the real property negotiator.
Motion to adjourn to closed session.
Second.
And we have a motion and a second to move into closed session. All those in favor, say aye.
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 All those opposed, abstain. We are now in closed session for items 2 through 5.
We go to the notorious room or
No,
something?
we go to the other room.
Okay.
Okay, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the San Mateo County Harbor District Board of Harbor Commissioners meeting for May 7th, 2014. Can I have a roll call, please?
Here.
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 Here. So now we are in open session. I'm going to identify Peter Grinnell as the District Real Property Negotiator. Mr. Grinnell.
We're already
I'm
done.
so sorry.
Nothing to report out.
So nothing to report out.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Sorry. We are then at public. I think I have my pages kind of mixed up here. Sorry. Oh yeah, sorry. I had my pages kind of mixed up. We have public comments. So I have here two public comments that are not specifically toward any agenda items. So I'm going to start with Bud Ratz, and then we'll go to Leonard Warren. Mr. Ratz. Thank you.
Thank you. My comment tonight will be divided into two parts. I'm going to speak twice, once now and later more about the specific budget going up. My comments are intended to be supportive, constructive. I'm here because I'm interested in the harbor and the citizen. And we have a unique resource here. And I just want to see it flow to its potential. But there are difficult time coming. I'll call your attention to the handout tonight, the last page of it, page 39. In which the projected balance at June 30th, 2015 of the estimated fund balance net asset, just flip it over, it's the very last page, of a negative 5.7. This schedule is different than the 416 or the 57 budget. I communicated with Peter and Robert, and I see that they've been working, and I commend the staff for really bringing this document into compliance. One thing that would help is if we actually had the audited fiscal year ending 13 numbers there, so that we could relate this column and see that it tied back to audited financial statements. What this really means is that your emergency fund and the reserve for short-term operating costs of 3.5 and the reserve for emergency of 1.6 really do not exist. These funds, because there's a negative balance there. Basically, and this ties in the picture that Deborah pointed out at the last meeting, April 16th, is that there are difficult times ahead for the district. You're really facing what I would call Santa Ana financial winds. And basically, your toolbox is pretty empty. if you look at the possibilities and additional revenue sources, berthing, inflation, fishing, probably decline because maybe in terms of competitiveness, the fishing rates are a little high. Real estate, probably inflation. And that leaves then the tax situation. Fortunately, tax revenue should be increasing as real property values recover. But that leaves you basically with the public. And I think that a lot of the emphasis should be on communication, outreach, and telling the story about the Harbor District. One of the major things that you do is public safety. You provide fire, police, safety instruction, and protection. And you talk a lot about it. But you haven't identified the cost of that activity. So you communicate that to the public and tell them there's that portion of your tax dollars that are not related to the operation of the harbor. We're providing fire and police protection services for the community. You need to talk about the outreach, the geographic scope of that activity. You have a scanning project. Volunteers, if you were reaching out and interacting, that cost could be avoided. Many cities in the area use volunteers for those activities.
Mr. Ratz, I'm going to have to cut you off now.
Okay, I've just got other suggestions, and I'm very concerned.
Thank you. Mr. Warren?
Good evening, Mr. President, Commissioners. I submitted a speaker's list for public comment in advance because I knew that I was going to be standing here saying, it's really hard to hear you from there. If you're going to continue to meet in this room with miserable acoustics, you need to get a sound system that includes amplification for the audience. And as much as I manage to come to the meetings and annoy you, you're going to be hearing that at every meeting until you do it. Or switch venues to a place with better acoustics. The acoustics of a room like this is intentionally designed to dampen noise and make it not carry. That's what the high ceiling is all about. And I thought I had something else, but I have probably forgotten what it was. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we are now concluding the public comments and questions, and now we are at staff recognition. Mr. Grinnell?
I have one, but I'll actually request through the chair to turn it over to Harbor Master Grindy.
Harbor Master
Good
Grindy.
evening. I have a couple, so bear with my reading here slightly. A couple weeks ago, we had the Easter egg hunt event, and I want to recognize, and it's in your packets already, and it's already gone to staff employee files, to the Oyster Point staff, Charles White, Gary Stern, Jim Merlot, Greg Gubser, Neil McGeehan, James Smith, Matt Hoff, and Abby DeMetta. This is for all the efforts they did to make that Easter egg hunt a success. And the second one that's more specialized towards Gary Stern. At the same event, he did all the pre-work, and he did an excellent job. Not just the day of the event, but for days before, where he had to call people and contact people and everything else. And I want to make sure he's specially recognized.
Could you speak a little bit louder? I'm having a hard time hearing you.
Sure, I sure can.
Thank you.
The third one is a letter of appreciation that is just recently dropped in your packets, and that was for a rescue last evening that I was part of, but more for what I observed. James Smith, one of our deputy harbor masters, last night in the middle of a rescue called me, but basically he was involved greatly with the intent of resolving an issue that was definitely an emergency at the time. And I just want to acknowledge the efforts, because James Smith and another Deputy Harbor Master, Matt Hoff, at Oyster Point, they do work the evenings alone. And when you got to take on a rescue of that late in the evening, it's admirable. Coast Guard did arrive, but they came by helicopter, so basically they turned away once they saw we had control. But it was really, it was fun to, for a better way to put it, it was fun to see staff do it right there and be part of that. So that's my things for this evening. Thank you.
Mr. President, it's my understanding that, Mr. Grindy, that someone was pulled out of the water as well as a boat.
No, they
brought
already
to safety?
came out of the water.
They were already out of the water?
Yeah, they'd already gotten out by the time we got there.
Okay, thank you.
Well, thank you again. I commend all of you for the work that you do. That a lot of it is just unseen by the public and unheard, and you know, that's probably a good thing, because if we did hear about it, you know, in the press, it's probably something bad, probably. So.
Well, and I think it's important to know that, you know, staff work together on both sides of the hill to cross-train, cross-practice, et cetera. And it's really important to acknowledge that Oyster Point does this type of work also. It may not be as frequent as the coast side, but it does happen. And it's being ready to handle it now, much like a fire station for a fire.
Absolutely, and I did happen to attend the Easter egg hunt, and it was just a really fun event. I was watching all of the, and I know that Commissioner Tucker was there, and Commissioner Holsinger, you were there, I believe? Mm-hmm. Yes, and it was just, I was watching the children and their parents, and it was just really, everyone was having a good time. The mayor of South San Francisco was there having a great time with the Coast Guard. I mean, it was a fun event. So again, I commend you and your staff. Thank you.
Thank you.
That was a really good community, feel-good event.
Thank you.
Okay, that's for staff recognition. Now we are at agenda setting, where Harbor Commissioners may suggest future agenda items. Commissioner Holsinger?
Nothing, thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Tucker?
I have nothing.
Okay. I have nothing. Commissioner
I have nothing.
Harbano? Commissioner Brennan?
I have a couple things. So I received a spreadsheet from the staff regarding 2013 fish buying fees. I'm assuming the rest of the board also received that as well. Has everyone seen it here?
Please continue.
No, has anyone else seen it? Because otherwise I should give some more information. If you've already reviewed it, I don't want to go into a lot of...
Please go into it then.
Okay. So, so I assume I'm the only one that has it then. So I'm looking at a sheet which has the 2013 fish buying fees, and the total fees paid in 2013 for Morningstar Fisheries was $5,528.51. The total amount paid in 2013 by Pillar Point Seafood is $37,414.38, and the total paid by three captains was $1,301.09. This is very interesting information, and it brings up the question of how does the district verify that the fees that were paid. It's my understanding that a letter went out on April 16th to our three fish buyers. I'm assuming the rest of the board is familiar with this letter. Do I need to explain the letter, or?
Please just continue.
Okay. So there was a letter sent by Deborah Galarza to the fish buyers, which said that JJACPA, which is our auditor, is going to be performing an audit on fees paid by the fish buyers. And I assume that's going to cost the district money, the audit. I don't think we've discussed that at a previous meeting. It is asking the fish buyers for information to conduct the audit, although the information that it's requesting is extremely vague and impossible to decipher. So I think that the board needs to take a look at this process. So we have these fees that have been paid. We have this current request for information from the fish buyers with an audit, but it gives no date by which they have to provide the information. So it's sort of like an open-ended audit, which I don't think works. And if you look at what was paid, there seems to be some serious inconsistencies given the volume of fish that came in on the pier for each fish buyer. So I think that this needs to be addressed, and there needs to be a clear way to substantiate whether or not these are the correct amounts paid. And this audit letter, I would want, I would hope the board had already read, but it doesn't appear that you have. We need to do something about this. So I'd like to put this on a future agenda so we can discuss what it is that we're doing with this audit, because this letter, the way that it's written, is going to be completely ineffective, and we need to take our fees seriously, and we need to find an effective way, if we're going to continue to charge fees, to verify what's being paid to the district. And at this point, we have no way to do that. And that's clear if you read this letter. So I think we need to not continue to sit on our hands on this issue. We need to be proactive and sort this out. So I move to put reviewing the fish buying fees from 2013 and the vague audit that's happening on the agenda for public discussion, so we can get public comment on it. We, as the board, can get informed what the staff is doing, and we can try to take some steps to improve the process.
Point of information
Yes, Commissioner Holsinger?
directed to council. It would be my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, but any review of leases for the purpose of determining compliance or lack of compliance with the leases is a legal matter that should be taken up under closed session. Is that correct?
Yes, you could discuss that in closed session.
Well, wouldn't it be, as the motion is couched, wouldn't that be required?
It would probably be prudent to do that, yes.
And-
Just for clarification, the fees which the fish buyers paid is not required to be discussed in closed session. That information is public information, and that's how it was provided to me, as public information. So any member of the public can review what has been paid to date by our fish buyers, and that information can be obtained through the district. So I think that having an open session discussion about it would make sense, because all we'd be discussing are ways to try to improve the process so that we could verify whether or not we were getting paid the correct amount. But if you prefer to do it in closed session, I'm open to that. I just want to get it, in front of the board.
Okay, so Commissioner Brennan, I think since it's your motion, you'll have to decide, do you want it in open or do you want it in closed? And then we could vote on it.
I'd like it in open session.
An open session. Okay, so that's a motion to discuss these fees, fish buyer fees, the lease regarding the fish buyers fees in open session. Do I hear a second? Okay, for the purposes of the motion, I'm going to second it. So there's a motion and a second. So can I have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Brennan?
Aye.
Commissioner Holsinger?
No.
Commissioner Caravano?
Abstain.
Commissioner Tucker?
Aye.
President Bernardo?
Aye. So motion carries, so it'll be on the agenda to discuss fish buyers fees in
Great.
open session. Okay,
And
any others?
yes, as a matter of fact, one last thing, which is the situation with the hoist, the new hoist location at Johnson Pier. I have emailed a number of questions to the general manager regarding the hoist. I haven't gotten responses back to all of my questions, and now there's new questions, and I think President Bernardo probably knows a lot more about the planning, permitting process than I do, since you were a planning commissioner for South San Francisco. But it's come to my attention that permits were not pulled for this hoist, and I want to better understand the district's responsibility for making sure that if we have structures added to our pier that are potentially a safety hazard, load-bearing, and could sink a boat, could end a life, that sort of thing, that we are seeking the proper permits or our fish buyer seeking the proper permits and going through the proper process. And it's my understanding that none of that happened and that there was no communication, according to our general manager, between the district and the fish buyer who installed the hoist. So I'd like to put on the agenda a public discussion, meaning an open session, about the situation so that as a board, we all understand very, very clearly if another fish buyer wants to put a hoist in a new location, exactly what the process is. So there's no lack of clarity, no running around the process because of lack of information, that it's, dealt with very clearly, and we know the rules going forward, because there's definitely problems with what happened with this recent situation.
So is that your motion? I'm sorry, I got lost in there. The motion is Commissioner Brennan then to,
We need to have I'd like to have a agenda item to discuss the hoist and what the permitting process is for placing a hoist in a new location on Johnson Pier. It appears that this district,
Okay, that's the motion.
okay, that's the
Is that-
motion, okay. So the motion is to have a discussion. Okay, do I hear a second on that motion? There's no second on the motion. Okay, I will second it for a vote. So can I have, before the vote though, I want to say something actually. My understanding of this situation is, and I think that Harbor Master Grindy can also add to this, is that within the leases of the individual fish buyers, it's written in the language of the contract that each fish buyer is responsible for their own permitting process if they are to put new equipment out, and that they would have to run it through the county building and planning sections and have all of that approved. And that is incumbent upon the individual fish buyers. That's my understanding of it. So, Harbor Master Grindy, would you like to?
Very much
Is that correct?
the case, yeah.
Okay.
and
so-
just, I think I need to, after discussing this with the county, my understanding is that there is responsibility on the part of the district because the hoist is permanently attached to our facility. So if permits were not taken out, which it's my understanding they were not, that the district could be liable to pay potential fines. So as a district, we need to fully understand our responsibility. We can't just be like, anybody can put a hoist anywhere and go talk to the county, we're done with it. That's not how it works.
Right, but I would like to have Harbor Master Grindy talk about this specifically, because I did second it, and this was the thing that I wanted to add. I would like, before we do the vote, I would like Harbor Master Grindy to just add a few things to this, if you have anything to add.
Say point of order.
I think in the case of any installation, electrical to whatever that's done on a tenant's leasehold piece.
President Bernardo, can I go point of order? You're kind of having a discussion about an item that's not on the agenda. This is agenda setting. I don't know if
Thank you. That's right. So my apologies. We shouldn't be talking about it. There's a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Brennan?
Aye.
Commissioner Wolfinger?
No.
Commissioner Carabana?
No.
Commissioner Tucker?
No.
President Bernardo?
Aye. Motion does not pass. Okay, Commissioner Brennan, anything else?
That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. We are now at public hearing. Back to the continuance of hearing on the preliminary operating and capital budget for fiscal year 2014-15.
Point of order, Mr. President, if I may.
Yes.
For item 10, we have a visitor who will be addressing the board from Moffett and Nickel Engineers, and you've come a long way, and I would request, as has been past practice, if you might take up that item before you get into the big budget discussion.
All right. Let's do that. So let's move to item 10, and then we'll go back to 6. Okay. Item 10, additional task for Moffett Nickel Engineers Engineering Services for Pillar Point Harbor Romeo Pier removal. Mr. Grinnell, you have the report.
Yes. Basically, it goes like this. The Romeo Pier has been a fixture in Pillar Point Harbor for many, many years, and it has basically outlived its useful life. It's been closed for a number of years now for safety reasons. The last occupant of the pier, Morningstar Fisheries, was relocated to the Johnson Pier some years ago. And so there's been no real activity on the Romeo Pier. As a matter of fact, in 1997-98, an engineering evaluation of the pier was done, and it was found that even at that point, it was seriously deteriorating. We are now at a point where there are pieces of the pier falling in the water. The main building on the top of the pier is listing to one side and could conceivably fall in the water, depending on storm conditions or other influences. And so staff took the initiative to contact the Coastal Commission about an emergency demolition permit to basically remove the Romeo Pier. And we're in that permit process now. The Coastal Commission is asking for certain detailed information. We provided them an initial set, and they need more, and that brings us to tonight's item. Basically, we are recommending that Moffett & Nichol, that did the original engineering study of the pier years ago, be enabled under, as an additional task to their current contract for our facilities condition survey, to basically evaluate the Romeo Pier for purposes of demolition and provide the information that the Coastal Commission requires to do that. In other words, the money that you see in this item is for pre-construction activity. Once we would be getting all the necessary permits, we would be coming back to the Harbor Commission for a final go-ahead to seek construction bids for demolition of the pier. So there would be at least one more opportunity here for the board to revisit this after Moffett & Nichol carries out its proposed work here. And we have Mr. Bo Jensen from Moffett & Nichol here tonight, who can respond to questions and state whatever he feels is appropriate at this point on this item.
Okay. Thank you. Why don't we have him come up to the front if we have questions, because I know that I have a question. And on this item, let me see if I have speaker cards, first of all. All right. No, I don't have any speaker cards on item number 10. So,
Why don't you just ask if anybody wants to speak, since they didn't know this item was going to be so early, just to check.
okay. Is there anyone from the public who would like to speak on this particular item?
Okay,
Okay,
thanks for asking.
sure.
Nope,
Commissioners?
stay here, stay here.
Commissioners?
No, I'll defer.
Commissioner Tucker? Commissioner Carvano? Commissioner Brennan?
Well, I'd like to hear what you have to say, and then I might have a question. Is that okay?
Okay, that's fine. I'm sorry. Okay.
Oh, no, that's fine.
I just thought it might streamline the process, but please go ahead and give us a presentation if you have
Peter
one.
Grinnell did an excellent job. I worked on the first survey, 1998, was it? Something like that. And we felt it was in fairly poor condition, and perhaps some of you have been out there, I don't know, but I remember walking on the pier that long ago, and when the wind blew or when a boat came up to the side, you could move with it. You know, it was in pretty poor shape.
And that was what year, I'm sorry?
1998.
Oh, okay.
So what is this?
2014.
Well, I know that. So we're 14, 15, 16 years maybe roughly
Yeah,
beyond
later.
that, and so it has deteriorated considerably. Some of the cap beams have totally rotted out in the middle. The planks are in bad shape, and the photos that I think you received in your package show it's really in an unsafe condition. And so it is time to, frankly, from a safety point of view, just get it out of harm's way and keep people safe.
Question. Peter, is probably best addressed to you. The engineers will put together the plans, et cetera, et cetera. Who will take care of the mitigation?
Well, that depends what it is. Let me state that we have already inquired of the Coastal Commission about obtaining mitigation credits for removing the pier. For those who are unfamiliar with what this means, piers are considered by the Coastal Commission and coastal policy as fill. They're covering up open water and therefore aquatic habitat. And so by removing a pier, you are removing fill and therefore ostensibly enhancing aquatic habitat. And so we have asked the Coastal Commission for mitigation credit, given that we're approved to demolish the pier and actually go through and demolish it, that we then get mitigation credits, which we would then apply or be able to apply in the future for or on some other project, for example, a new pier.
Okay. Let me follow up just to ask the engineer. Without holding you to it, do you foresee taking the pilings down or just taking the decking and the houses off the top?
From an engineering point of view, we like to take it all down.
Subsurface as well?
Typically, Coastal Commission likes to remove the piles, break them off, and or cut them, depending on what you find in the field. But typically, we like to remove the entire pier. Some of those piles are in very poor condition.
And they're all creosote also?
They're all, from what we understand, and we actually did tests back in '98, we found everything had creosote.
Yeah.
Whether every pile does, we didn't check every pile, but I would think so. They're all Douglas fir, and you could remove only the top if you wanted to, what we call the superstructure, and leave the piles, but they become sometimes a navigation hazard.
Thank you.
If I might comment, Mr. President, on this point. Again, we will be basically needing to follow the lead of the permit authorities on this. And just to give you a sense of things, on the one hand, if you were to, and I'm sure Mr. Jensen can speak on this as well, if you were to actually remove the piling or that portion of a piling that is in the bottom of the bay, in the mud, you might be creating certain environmental hazards that might be frowned on by the Coastal Commission and the Regional Water Board because not only of the creosote, but causing disturbance to the sea bottom and turbulence in that benthic habitat. So there are concerns with trying to remove everything. On the other hand, you could conceivably leave those pier piling bottoms in the mud and just remove those portions of the pilings that are hanging off the superstructure, and there's a lot of those. About 25% were found not to reach bottom in 1998, so there's more now. So basically, if you just simply took everything out that you can see, that would probably cause less environmental disturbance. It would also be cheaper by a lot, and still accomplish what you would need. To the extent that there's anything left there that might be construed, and Mr. Jensen makes a good point, it might be construed as a possible navigation hazard, that can be marked by floats.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
I have a couple questions.
Okay. Commissioner Brennan, I'm sorry, did you also? Commissioner Brennan and then Commissioner Brennan.
Okay. So back to the mitigation credits. So once what you're going to be producing are, so I understand this, demolition plans and helping to prepare construction bid documents with technical specifications. Is that pretty much it? You're going
Well,
to,
we will be preparing them, not helping. We will prepare the bid documents.
okay, so you'll prepare the bid documents and you'll respond to the Coastal Commission's request for additional information?
Yes.
So you're going to handle all the,
Right. So the way we usually phrase that is we will prepare the technical specifications. You'll have a contract package in front of that. We'll do the technical specifications. We'll assist the district with questions from the Coastal Commission or the Water Board and the Corps. You'll have a Section 10, may have a Section 10 permit. So we'll assist with that on the technical side. That's correct.
Okay.
So the plans, specs, and assistance.
okay, and then a question about access. I know, what year was it that the district sold the rights to access the pier? Was that around 98 also?
No, that was somewhat later.
Okay, so
I can find out, but I don't recall the exact.
in 2000 something?
Yeah.
So since we don't have rights to access the pier by land, how is that going to impact the removal of the pier? Is it going to change the way the pier's removed? If we had access to land, would it be any different is the question?
Well, part of that is you're asking, and we sort that out during the preparation of the plans and specs. We sort all that out. So I haven't really addressed that. But typically with a pier like this, a large percentage of the work is done from the water.
Okay.
Because it's the only way you can do it. So you have a crane barge and you have a regular flat barge and you put everything on it. And we were going to, I think the original thought was to bring it into the beach and then offload it on the trucks and take it to a landfill. Now, if we can't do that, that's fine. We just have to find another spot to offload it.
So those are the things you'll be working out with the
Yes.
Coastal Commission?
Right.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Mr. Grinnell.
Yeah, if I may add to Mr. Jensen's comments on that. If it turns out that Moffett and Nichol find that, in fact, for at least some portion of the activity, access from the land is necessary, we would need to work out a temporary agreement with Romeo Packing Company for access, and that would be built into the whole process.
We could not take it all down
Yeah.
from the water. You just have to get on the beach at some point and take part of it out.
Thank you. Commissioner Parvano.
I have a question for Mr. Grinnell. In reading this, the supporting documents here, I didn't see an item or reference to the appropriations that have been available for us for deepening of the channel to the Romeo Pier. And I don't know if it's still applicable or those funds have vanished.
No, they have long since vanished. Basically, and again, for the background for those who don't have the history, as a matter of fact, the Harbor District and the Army Corps of Engineers looked into a question of dredging a new deep water, meaning 13 feet deep, navigation channel from the mouth of the outer breakwater into the Romeo Pier and alternatively into the Johnson Pier. And the cost-benefit analysis that the Army Corps came up with in their initial study, which was in 1996, was 2.5 to 1 favorable to go to the Romeo Pier and 0.5 to 1 to come into the Johnson Pier. Obviously, a lot less because the Johnson Pier was more crowded. There's the potential for more navigation hazards, and the whole point of the new channel was to avoid that kind of situation. As it turned out, the Moffett and Nichol study showed that the Romeo Pier itself was not the best location to bring a new channel in because the pier was really not very usable. The Army Corps then said, well, if you put it at another location nearby, that's okay. That's a local sponsor adjustment which could be taken into account. In any case, the Harbor District got into what the Army Corps calls a Phase 2 feasibility stage, which, for example, is the stage we're in with the Army Corps on the Surface beach erosion project right now. Pre-construction, detailed design considerations, and so on. And we got into that, and the Army Corps then informed the district that the district would have to provide another $500,000 as local sponsor share. The Harbor Commission, I can't remember what year that was in, but it was in the earlier 2000s. And the Harbor Commission considered that and said, this is something beyond our budget. We really can't do that at this time because a location for a new replacement pier had not yet been identified. So basically, this would be spending a lot of money for a new channel to who knows where. So basically, the project was suspended, and by mutual agreement, the contract was terminated. The district's advance local sponsor share was returned. At that time, it was about $41,000. We got that back, and so the answer is no. There's nothing out there now.
Okay, thank you.
One last little thing.
Commissioner, I'm sorry, were you finished?
Yes.
Okay, Commissioner Brennan?
That question reminded me, I was going to ask about grant opportunities to pay for the removal of the pier. Since we've known since 1998 that we need to do this eventually, it seems like there's potentially money out there. I'm wondering if we're going to create mitigation credits, and I don't know how these things work exactly, but would there be a way that we could negotiate something with the State Lands Commission where we could give them our mitigation credits if they helped us with grant, because I know they do give grant money. They've been working on that recently, actually. Grant to help pay to remove the pier. Have we looked into that thoroughly?
Not yet, because it's premature. However, it's an interesting idea, and it's certainly one of the things we could be looking at. I'm interested in your zeroing in on State Lands Commission, because that's a rather unusual agency and circumstance, and that kind of an exchange might just work with them. Possibly, it depends. Again, number one, we'd have to go through a process that says, yes, you can have mitigation credits. Two, we have to find out how many credits or how much of a credit we get. How does that translate into value, and to what extent is that value significant enough and of interest enough to state lands? I mean, these are all things we would investigate, obviously, and find out. If, in fact, that's worth something, well, we could factor that into a future project situation. On the other hand, if it's not, actually, I don't know offhand. We'd have to revisit, of course, the question of new grant sources for things. As a matter of fact, as you know, the district has just submitted a grant application to the Federal Department of Transportation for a TIGER grant, which is an acronym for a long economic recovery type of grant. And since this involves transportation on the water, it might very well be eligible for some kind of grant funds from the Department of Transportation. That is something we could certainly be looking at. I know that some of the other traditional sources, like the Coastal Conservancy, or the Wildlife Conservation Board, they don't have any money for this kind of thing.
Well, someone at the Coastal Conservancy recently mentioned to me that there was an opportunity that State Lands was looking for opportunities to take over an area if they got ownership of it, if that makes sense. So if it became their property, their title lands, then they would provide grant money for a project. I don't know the details. It just seems like that might be worth checking into right away, since they're dealing with that at the moment.
No, that's a very good suggestion, and we will do that. very definitely. Again, for those who may not be aware of it, Pillar Point Harbor is actually a Tidelands grant awarded to the Harbor District by the state legislature in 1960, statutes of 1960, and for purposes of commerce, navigation, and fisheries. And so the State Lands Commission, in fact, would have a particular interest. We are a Tidelands grantee, and we've responded to their surveys about sea level rise and so on. So we have a relationship with them. And so again, I commend your suggestion, and that's definitely something we can look into. The question of whether or not it involves them actually taking over direct administration, which would mean removing the Harbor District, that's something we can explore with them. I don't know how that works. We have to see what it is.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. I have no questions, so thank you, Mr. Jensen.
Thank you.
Mr. President, I would move then to make a motion to authorize the general manager to direct Moffett Field to carry out an additional task under paragraph C4 of the district's contract with Moffett Nickel to provide engineering services for the Pillar Point Harbor Mayo Pier in an amount not to exceed $61,200. I would so move.
I would offer a friendly amendment to also include adoption of Resolution 11-14 as set forth in the packet of materials.
That's fine. I'm just fine with the second. You second it?
And I'll second it as well.
That's fine with
Okay,
me.
thank you. I hear a motion and a second. I think we've asked all of our questions already, so can I have a roll call, please?
Aye.
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 Aye. Motion carries. Thank you. Back to item 6. Thank you, Mr. Jensen. Back to item 6, continuance of hearing, preliminary operating and capital budget for fiscal year 2014-15. I'm going to declare the hearing open. Has report of notice been given, Mr. Grinnell?
It has, Mr. President.
Okay, thank you. So now we are at staff report and recommendation. The draft budget, Mr. Grinnell?
Yes. You have before you the district's preliminary budget for fiscal year 2014-15. The action before you tonight is to adopt the resolution 1314 to approve this preliminary budget. This is a necessary action because the Harbor District is required under statute to commence a period of not less than 30 days for public review and comment pursuant to publishing a public notice to that effect. And the public notice, which we've done, every year now for so many years, specifies that the preliminary budget just adopted is available for public review and comment, and that on a specific date and at a particular time and place, the Harbor Commission will then fix, or in common parlance, adopt a final budget, which historically has tended to happen at the second meeting in June of the Harbor Commission. So basically, again, it's necessary to provide enough time, hence approval of this preliminary budget tonight is vital. Now, just to clarify for the public in particular, the Harbor Commission has adopted and continues, and this year is no different, a process whereby the public hearing on the budget, which was opened several meetings ago, and has been continued till tonight, will presumably be continued right through June when you adopt the final budget. And that means that the public not just because of the statute, but just because of the Harbor Commission's action as well, will have continued opportunity at every Harbor Commission meeting to be heard on the budget. Obviously, between meetings, again, comments from the public are always welcome and would be taken into account by board and staff. So we have an ongoing process, and so the fact of adopting this preliminary budget tonight, I have to emphasize, is by no means the end of the line. It basically formally enables the statutory public review process to begin. That's really all it is.
Thank you, and I appreciate that. You know, that's good for the viewers who are watching this, who are coming into this for the very first time and do not understand how the financial process of the district works. And I also just want to add thank you for the sort of the addendum here, which says fiscal year 2014-15 budget breakdown by category for operating expenses. For example, I mean, even repairs and maintenance of entry signage, estimated cost $50,000. Estimated cost of equipment of public access bike racks, $20,000. I mean, I really appreciate this sort of menu because it makes it easier for me to understand how much the price tags, you know, of each of these items. So that helps me a lot. So now with that, I would like to go into public testimony. I have comment cards here on item 6. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4. I have 4, and I'm going to go in this order. Mr. Bud Ratz, Mr. Anthony Basso, Mr. Leonard Warren, and Mr. John Ullum. So let's go with Mr. Bud Ratz first.
Peter, I'd like to acknowledge and thank you for your comments about the open process, but I find one fault in it. 3 minutes is not enough. I would really encourage the commission and the questions when I get through to hold another workshop and in a different format where we can all sit around a table and we can have a dialogue and some interaction. I really encourage that. Number one, when I saw the 5-7 budget in the agenda tonight, my first instance was no change. And then I started to read it, and there were changes. If there were changes, I would have expected a summary sheet covering those changes to be presented. The budget is dramatically different from the 416 budget. There are $1 million shifts in funds and things around. The final budget deficit went from 2.5 million to 3.6 million. The projected annual debt deficit in the current year went from 2.4 to 124,000. You can't digest these. I don't see how you commissioners could adjust those numbers for this meeting tonight. The whole budget process I have difficulty with. Number one, you should have an operating budget, which is continuing operations, continuing operation of the harbor, the safety facilities, and everything else. Then you should have a section for one-time items. The strategic business plan, changes which might come up during the year. Then you should have a capital budget section. And that capital budget section should start off with, since capital projects cover multiple years, should start off with the listing of all approved projects, their budget, expenditures to date, which should tie to the general ledger construction in progress, and then the amount remaining. And the funding sources for those amount remaining should be in a reserve called the Reserve for Approved Capital Projects. Then you should have proposed capital projects. And those proposed capital projects should each have a description, an associated budget, and a source of fundings identified. Then a final section of the budget would be transfers to and from reserves. If you're transferring money to a rainy day fund, that transfer should show and so on. And each of those statements should start out with prior fiscal year, current year, and then the budget, so that you can see the flow of funds and you can see where your resources are going. And unless you get these tools in your toolbox, you're not going to be able to deal with it. For example, two of the primary questions tonight on the pier, I did not hear. Number one, the source of funds for the $61,000 you're spending when you're in deficit. And what's a rough estimate of the cost of removal? Where are the funds going to come from? Why are you proceeding? And the second thing is the discussion of the PR aspects of it. You're removing a historical landmark. Again, it's the communication part, integration into the community, which provides your basic resources. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Point of information, if I may, Mr. President.
Yes, Mr. Grinnell.
As a matter of fact, there are a couple of changes that are in this budget before you, and because there's only a couple of them, I'm going to mention them. There was no need to waste a whole bunch of paper printing the whole thing out again. Aside from a name addition on the title page, on page 35 of 44, we've added a guesstimate, and I underline guesstimate, provisional, $650,000 to the budgeted projects line for the Romeo Pier removal project that you just took preliminary action on. You should understand that we don't know how much it's going to cost. That's exactly why we wanted you to approve Moffitt and Nichols' work, so that we could get a number. It's premature to have that. However, we know it's going to cost something, and the budget, even at this preliminary stage, needs to signal some amount of expenditure at a six-figure level. And so we have guesstimated $650,000 on page 35. The second change is on page 39. The number for the second line from the bottom labeled, quote, invested in capital assets, net of related debt.
What page?
39 of 44. To include the capital asset figure, the audited fiscal year 12-13 numbers. This number will change again as we get closer to the year end, and we can determine which capital projects will be capitalized. So again, there is a change as we go, and there will be others as we go into the rest of the process through May and early June, and we'll keep you informed accordingly of those.
Which line? Reserved for future capital improvements?
No, the second from the bottom, it says invested in capital assets, net of related debt.
Thank you, Mr. Grinnell. I'm going to continue with the public testimony. Mr. Anthony Basso.
Good evening, Commissioners. I appreciate the opportunity to talk with you tonight. I have the budget breakdown sheet from your table that President Bernardo, you were referring to a little while ago. May I ask questions or just talk?
This is.
I don't know the system.
It's pretty much just. Okay, go ahead and
Okay,
go
great.
through your.
I'll just shoot.
Your statements.
In no particular order. The third item, it says fire pump to Almar. If you can just describe a little more what that is, whoever knows about.
What page are we on?
It's a three-page document.
It's on the supplements.
Oh,
And there's a budget breakdown by category for operating expenses.
okay.
Second page, third item, just what the fire pump is and what Almar.
It's the fire pump on one of the boats on the harbor, Pillar Point Harbor.
And what's an
Another-
Almar?
it's
You have a firefighting boat?
It would be a fire pump on that, so if we have a boat fire,
I understand. Thank
Okay.
you. That was my only
Thank you.
question there.
Thank you.
Also, I see for Pillar Point, you guys project $100,000 in sign-related expenses. That's, for example, $500 fine. So I guess we're going to know how to find the harbor. And a $22,000 copier. That seems like a pretty good copier. And then a couple of items, barbecues and bike racks. Are there currently barbecues at the harbors? I use both harbors. I don't recall seeing
At
barbecues.
both harbors, there's bike racks
Yeah,
in some spots and barbecue places, much like a park setting.
Okay.
So it's
At both
increasing,
harbors
yeah, it's
currently,
trying to
and-
increase or enhance.
Very good. And it looks like you're planning approximately twice the improvement at Pillow Point than you are at Oyster Point. Okay, that's all I've got. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Warren, Leonard Warren?
Good evening, Mr. President, Commissioners. I have a few unrelated comments. So I have one question, but I'd like you to ask the staff for an explanation of it after I leave the podium so it doesn't cut into my time. And that is, I don't understand a negative number for undesignated fund balance / net asset. So if that could be explained later, I'd appreciate it. I would like to call your attention to page 6 of 44.
In the 6 of 40,
In the full budget.
in the full budget, okay.
So it's page titled Budget Summary. I think a number of them are probably titled, can't go by that. A number of them are titled Budget Summary. It says page 6 of 44. If we look at the commission column, the total salary and payroll burden for the commission is over $93,000. Put this in perspective, another special district where the directors do roughly the same amount of work that you guys do. My district, I think the total cost for the board is about $10,000, so yours is 9 times. Then if you look at the next page, I think it is page 744, we go all the way to the bottom and look at the total expense for commission, $900,000. In order to compare that, we have to knock off the election costs because my district doesn't consider that an administrative cost. So 900,000 minus 650, we're at 250,000. I don't understand why the legal services line is there for commission. So even if we knock that out, it's still $150,000 for the commission, or 15 times what my board costs my district. My board is typical. So this district, as you've heard from me many, many times, is totally out of line, spending ridiculous amounts of money on the commission when the district is admittedly in a serious financial situation. So I think you need to cut down drastically, not by a percent, but by a huge factor, the amount of money you're spending on the commission. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Ullum.
Okay. Since 2005, your district has ran over $1 million a year deficit. You spent more than $1 million each year. In some years, it was up to $2 million. Every single year since 2005, except one. That was the year you almost defaulted on your DBW loan, to DWD. I did. Yeah, that's right, you did. It says that right in the emails I have from Mr. Grinnell. You were renegotiating your loan at that time, and then the DBW or DWB, whatever, found out that you had sold off the rights to those 2 docks. At which point they said, "Give us all that money. We'll let you credit that to this year's payment, and we'll renegotiate your loan." If you had not credited that $2 million to your account back then, the district could be broke right now. And here's why. As in this budget for 2014-15, you're running a 30% deficit. And it's been structurally there for over 10 years. back in 2005 approximately, you had around $9 million in unrestricted funds. This is important that you understand the difference between restricted and unrestricted funds. You have already, what is it, a $1.5 million, $2.5 million deficit for 2014-2015 budget cycle. According to your investment reports, as of today, the 31st, March, you had in unrestricted cash the money that you can spend for deficit spending. $2,453,000. So unless something radically changes between now and the end of your 2014-2015 cycle, you will be broke. You will have $12 million in restricted funds, money that goes to pay for your guys' health benefits when you retire. That they, I don't know what you have. You've got benefits. It says.
Let's not have a conversation, please.
I don't know why
let's
you do that. It's petty.
Let's have Mr. Allen
What it
finish.
says is, I'll get it right, unfunded health insurance termination benefit liability. You tell me what that means later on. What I'm saying is, right now you have $2.4 million and you're not yet at the end of this budget cycle. You're going to be down to what, 2 million? 1.5 million by the end of June? And then you're going to have a budget that's going to have a $2.5 million deficit in it. And I know you're going to bring up things like depreciation and things like that, but you know that depreciation is important. If you ain't paying to fix your widget and keep it going, your widget's going to go away, and then there goes your golden goose widget, right? You have to maintain the widgets. So I don't see any desperation here. I don't see anybody saying, hey, we're running a 30% budget deficit and we're going to run out of money in 2 years. And the last thing, I know you let me go on, these people mention numbers that keep changing. In your 2012-2013 budget, your undesignated fund balance was projected to be $3 million. In your 2013-2014 budget, the 2013 undesignated fund balance was projected to be negative $11 million. You had a $14 million swing in whatever this number means. We're not really sure. But I would like to hear some people address, what is your reserve balance and how much are you going to pay and how much are you going to have left at the end of this cycle? Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. President, just a couple of points of clarification for Mr. Ullum's benefit. What we did was pull the coup. We got the Department of Boating and Waterways to approve two piers to WIDA, which is the Emergency Transportation Authority. DBA is the Department of Boating and Waterways. I happened to sit as president that year.
They can't hear you.
So we were very fortunate. And we could talk later about this. We were very fortunate. We got $3.6 million from a state agency, never touched the money, and got a reduction of $3.6 million from another state agency. That's a coup. We never touched the money. We were never in danger of default, no matter what you think you read. We have a restricted reserve of $1.4 million that sits there to this very day, and that's just for the Department of Boating and Waterways. In all these years, we have not missed a payment to the Department of Boating and Waterways, nor have we ever been late. And when we make the payment this year, we will owe them $5 million, down from $19 million in an economy that sucked for the last 14 years. So while the numbers are there, it's a little bit confusing, I know. But I just want to say that a budget is a working document, and as the gentleman will approve, it fluctuates. It's a document by which you have guidelines, and it changes from month to month. So that's what that's all about. Are you going to take comments from the commission now?
Mr. President, perhaps we can take a break, or do you want to finish this item?
There's still.
I just want to finish, excuse me, I just want to finish public testimony, and then I will take a break and then go to Harbor Commission questions. I'm just going with the agenda here. So that will conclude the public testimony. So I would like to do a 5-minute break, and then we will continue with Part E on Harbor Commission questions, okay? So we'll just have a 5-minute break.